It was ordinary maintenance work at a dairy farm outside Keensburg. A blocked pipe, a few tools, a concrete pit filled with liquid waste. 6 men went down to clear it. Hydrogen sulfide gas had built up inside that underground space. It's colorless, heavier than air, and deadly in seconds. The first man collapsed before reaching the pump. The second went down to help him, then another and another, until all 6 were gone. When rescuers arrived, gas levels were too high for entry. They waited for ventilators and air packs, watching the readings climb beyond instrument limits. Hydrogen sulfide binds to hemoglobin faster than oxygen. Victims collapse before they can take a second breath. OSHA investigators called it the worst confined space farm tragedy in recent US history. There was no fire, no explosion, just invisible gas. Every dairy uses pits to store manure. Few realize those pits breathe poison. Colorado regulators reissued confined space entry rules after this case. The rule is simple. No one enters without continuous air supply and another person topside. A 10-minute task cost 6 lives. The air itself did the killing. Dimmitt, Texas. A flat plain of barns, silos, and methane. South Fork Dairy was one of the largest in the country. Thousands of cattle, ventilation fans, manure vacuum engines running day and night. On April 10th, one engine overheated. Inside the manure handling building, methane and hydrogen sulfide were accumulating near the roof. Gas sensors were present, but not linked to automatic shutoff. When the motor sparked, the mixture reached its ignition point. The blast traveled through connected barns, feeding on air and dust. Flames stretched the length of football fields. Structures collapsed within seconds. Nearly 18,000 cows died. One worker suffered critical burns but survived. Investigators traced ignition to a mechanical fault, a failed bearing that overheated and ignited vapor. Methane concentration exceeded 5%, the lower explosive limit. Fire crews fought the blaze for hours, dousing smoldering feed piles and collapsed roofs. Environmental teams measured ammonia and hydrocarbon runoff seeping into drainage canals. For weeks, blackened concrete remained where steel barns had stood. State inspectors said the disaster was entirely preventable. Simple sensors and spark-proof motors would have averted ignition. The incident became the deadliest livestock loss in U.S. agricultural history. It also revealed a blind spot: how routine manure handling can create the same explosion chemistry as an oil refinery. Since 2023, methane monitoring systems are now required in new large-scale dairies across Texas. But the lesson came after the smoke. One engine, one spark, one field of animals gone. Pineapple rose in tropical heat. A harvester moves slowly across the field. Its metal boom rises high to reach the top leaves. Above, a 12,500-volt power line crosses the property. A man aged 27 was operating the machine when the boom touched the line. Electricity found its path instantly, from wire to metal frame, through the hydraulics, through him. No visible burn marks, no time for reaction. 1 millisecond of contact, current through heart and brain. Workers nearby saw a flash and thought a fuse had blown. By the time they reached the cab, he was slumped and unresponsive. The Queensland Electrical Safety Office and the coroner confirmed electrocution. The clearance between line and ground was within regulations, but the raised boom exceeded that height. It only missed the limit by inches. The court investigation led to new agricultural guidelines for Look Up and Live, a campaign reminding operators to map and mark every overhead line before moving high machinery. Power infrastructure is often invisible until it kills. Electric current does not need contact. High voltage arcs through air if humidity and distance align. A spark invisible in daylight can end a life before anyone sees it. His death reshaped farm training materials across Queensland, proving once again that on open land, danger also runs above ground. A farmyard outside Nass, County Kildare. Aged 54, a businessman and amateur jockey was working alone with a front-end loader. It was supposed to be a brief job, moving gravel, adjusting footing near stables. The hydraulic lift supporting the bucket failed without warning. The heavy arm descended instantly, trapping him beneath. Emergency responders pronounced him dead at the scene. The Health and Safety Authority opened an inquiry. Inspection showed corrosion in a pressure line and no safety prop engaged on the loader arm. Hydraulic oil leaks reduce pressure slowly until one sudden collapse. Ireland's farming death rate remains several times higher than its national industrial average. Machinery older than 20 years is still widely used. Safety devices are often missing or disengaged for convenience. Egan's accident led to another push for annual hydraulic inspections and the mandatory use of locking props during maintenance. Local tributes described him as experienced and cautious, a reminder that experience does not neutralize physics. A steel arm weighing hundreds of kilograms obeys only pressure and gravity. When pressure drops, gravity wins. Arkona, Ontario. Late spring, mild weather. A boy aged 15 was helping around the family farm. An underground water tank beneath a barn needed checking. Routine task, nothing unusual. He climbed down through the access hatch. Moments later, he stopped responding. Hydrogen sulfide gas had accumulated inside, produced by decaying organic material at the tank's base. The gas is heavier than air. Concentration increases at the bottom. One breath above threshold is enough to disable the respiratory center of the brain. Family members found him unconscious, called 911, and tried to enter. Paramedics arriving on scene detected lethal gas levels on their monitors. They could not descend without breathing equipment. He was pronounced dead soon after extraction. Police confirmed no foul play. Pure accident, pure chemistry. Hydrogen sulfide, the same compound responsible for multiple manure pit deaths worldwide, forms anywhere organic waste meets still water. Its odor, rotten egg, is detectable at low levels but disappears when the dose becomes lethal because the gas numbs the sense of smell. Canadian farm safety authorities used the case to launch renewed confined space campaigns. Posters across Ontario now warn, "If you can smell it, you're already too close." The tragedy underscored a reality common to agriculture. Hazards don't always come from machines or animals. Sometimes they're built into the chemistry of the work itself. Here's another one. Harvest season near Kingsley, Iowa. Fields full, wagons lined, tractors idle between runs. In those quiet seconds, motion began where none was expected. A loaded grain wagon wasn't fully secured. Its wheels rested on a slope just shallow enough to feel safe. Gravity disagreed. The wagon rolled slowly at first, then gathered weight and speed. Dana Sitzman was walking nearby, adjusting the chute of another unit. The wagon struck him before he had time to turn. Emergency services arrived within minutes, but the impact had already crushed him. Authorities listed the cause as an unattended vehicle incident. Nothing broke, no system failed, a simple oversight, a brake lever not fully engaged. In rural communities, small routines carry the highest stakes. The local co-op held a safety meeting a week later. Everyone knew the message by heart before it started. Secure every load, set the brake twice, chock the wheels. Farming doesn't forgive loose weight or half-locked gears. Neighbors finished his harvest the following day, a gesture repeated across Iowa whenever tragedy strikes. Rows of combines moving together, machines humming in silence, one farmer missing from the line. After the incident, cooperative insurance groups began adding mechanical brake check reminders to harvest guidelines. It didn't need new technology, only repetition, discipline, and habit. A rolling wagon turned into a one-sentence lesson. Nothing on a farm ever truly stands still. A public right-of-way crossed through open farmland near Ireton Wood. Holmes, a retired police officer, was walking the path with his wife and their dog. A herd of cows with calves grazed along the route. As the couple entered the field, the animals began moving closer, first curious, then defensive. Holmes turned to guide his wife toward the fence, but the herd broke into a charge. He was knocked down and trampled. She escaped by climbing a stile. Emergency services found him unresponsive within minutes. The inquest ruled death by blunt force trauma. The case reignited debate in Britain about livestock and public access. Over 30 people have died in the past decade from cattle encounters, most of them walkers. Animals with calves view humans and dogs as threats. Weight, speed, and herd movement turn that instinct into a lethal force. Following the inquest, the Health and Safety Executive reminded landowners of their duty under the Occupiers Liability Act to manage risk to public users of farmland. Farmers began posting clearer signs on gates. Cattle with calves, proceed at your own risk. His death changed nothing mechanical, nothing chemical, only awareness. The threat came from instinct, not malfunction. The same land that feeds also defends itself. For the public, it was another quiet warning that rural paths are not empty space. They're living territory. Milroy Township, Minnesota. A grain bin half full of corn stood under gray skies. Inside, a farmer climbed to break apart a bridge of grain that had hardened near the auger inlet. He'd done it before, same routine, same tool. When the crust collapsed, the grain beneath began flowing like liquid. He sank to his knees before he could grab the ladder. Within seconds, he was waist-deep, then chest-deep, then gone. Co-workers called 911 and began cutting into the steel with saws. Firefighters from multiple towns arrived within 10 minutes, but the bin's weight resisted every effort. A cubic meter of grain can exert several hundred kilograms of pressure, enough to stop the lungs from expanding even if the victim's head is above the surface. By the time rescuers reached him, there was no pulse. Cause of death? Suffocation by grain entrapment. His reports showed the auger hadn't been shut off and there was no safety harness attached. Standard lockout procedure existed, but wasn't followed. Welu had been working quickly to finish before rain. Afterward, local grain co-ops purchased rescue tubes and training kits for every county department. A plaque with his name sits on one, not for memorial, but reminder. Grain bins look solid from above, but act like quicksand once disturbed. Every season repeats the same equation. A single misstep, thousands of kilos of grain, and seconds before it's too late. No explosion, no sound, just motion and silence. Blue Mound, Macon County. Thomas Ritter, 69, entered a storage bin to clean out residual soybeans. The auger system had tripped earlier and stopped. He assumed the power was off. When the automatic reset timer reached its limit, the auger restarted. Movement underfoot turned the grain from solid to fluid. He was pulled inward as the spiral drew material toward the center. No one else was on site. When family members found the bin door open and tools abandoned, emergency crews were called from Decatur. They vacuumed grain from the top layer until reaching him, but the collapse had already suffocated him. The coroner ruled mechanical asphyxiation. OSHA investigators found that the power supply lacked a lockout tag. Automatic restart cycles are common in older systems, meant to resume work after temporary outages. In this case, that automation turned into a trap. The agency issued another advisory: zero energy state, verify, don't assume. Farmers across Illinois were urged to install manual reset switches before entering any bin. No storm, no fire, no malfunction, just the wrong assumption. Electricity doesn't care about timing, only about circuits completing. For Ritter, the system did what it was designed to do. It restarted. The human simply wasn't meant to be there when it did. Mitchell County, midsummer. A guy climbed a grain bin ladder to inspect stored corn after a week of humidity. Moisture had caused the top layer to crust. He stepped onto the surface, thinking it would hold. Beneath that crust was air. An empty pocket formed as grain settled. The surface gave way immediately. He dropped into the cavity and disappeared beneath the moving grain. Co-workers tried lowering a rope, but by the time they reached the point where he fell, the grain had compacted. Fire crews drilled release holes around the bin to drain corn outward, but it was recovery, not rescue. Suffocation occurs in less than 30 seconds once the chest is buried. The sheriff's office confirmed all safety gear was present: harness, rope, and tube, but unused. Like many farmers, Fisher was confident it would be a 2-minute job. Most confined space fatalities start that way. The Iowa Department of Agriculture later analyzed the incident and linked fatality risk directly to bin design. Older bins have internal ladders with no harness anchors. Newer models include overhead lifeline systems for exactly this reason. Victims' cooperatives began retrofitting older bins with anchor rings after his death. It cost less than $200 per bin, a fraction of a funeral. Every report on grain entrapment reads the same: no witnesses, no warning, no time. The only defense is restraint, the decision not to step inside at all. Every farmyard death tells the same story: small mistakes, heavy costs, and lessons written in hindsight. Subscribe for more.